we'll start with this exercise and then I'll backtrack a little bit. So you can just simply take your fingers, and I'm going to use my non-dominant hand. Normally I would use my dominant hand to trace, but I'm going to do non-dominant to see how that feels. And you'll just simply take a breath in and trace up the thumb. And you'll take a breath out and trace down the thumb. And keep going, breath in, and you'll probably be a different pace than me. And a breath out and trace down the next fingers. And again, breathing in, tracing. And breathing out, moving down. Breathing in, tracing up. And breathing out, tracing down. And again, breathe in, trace up. And breathe out. And then now taking a moment, you could close your eyes or just divert your eyes from the computer if you like, and notice the differences in the hands. One might feel more stimulated. The other one might feel less so. Maybe one feels dull and one feels alive. And now focus on the hand that you did not trace and notice that hand fully until the hands almost start to feel the same. So just focusing on the hand that you did not trace, the one that felt more dull or quiet. Focus on the pulsation and feeling from the inside out. And when you feel they feel almost the same, you can open your eyes or bring your eyes back to the screen. All right. So Jessica, I don't know if you wanted to say anything, but I can introduce myself since I know I started right away with the with the mindfulness exercise.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself? Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Melissa.
My pleasure. So I'm Melissa, and I'm with Caregiver Wellness Retreat. We're a nonprofit that is based here in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and we have been offering free in-person before COVID retreats. And since COVID, everything has been predominantly online. And I do want to say that one of our wonderful partners here in Santa Fe, it's called the Memory Care Alliance. And I'm going to tell you their website is exactly that, thememorycarealliance.org. And they're putting on the first weekend in April, which I believe is April 9th, a free event for caregivers. They'll have respite care on campus. They'll have speakers, lunch, events. All you need to do is go onto their website and email the director and tell them you're coming. So, and then I just saw today that they're going to be offering free vaccinations that day as well. So for your booster shots on site. And so that's Saturday, April 9th. It's 11 to 2 at the Santa Fe Community College. And they run amazing programs for caregivers of Alzheimer's and other dementia. And in fact, we've just partnered with them. They have respite care that they work with drop-in respite care through Vista Living, which is Sierra Vista here in Santa Fe, when they have their support groups. And we are now partnering with them. I've given them our grant that we received from Encorum to be able to provide respite care for those that have ambulatory or individuals that they're caring for at home and not able to leave the home. So if you're interested in all of that and the wonderful programs that Memory Care Alliance puts together, as you can tell, I've spent a little bit of time talking about it. That I think they do an amazing things for our community, and I'm really proud to be working with David on that. So today is all about courageous caregiving, and this is definitely a topic that is just a big one for me. I am actually currently a long distance caregiver, and I don't know how many of you are long distance caregivers as well, or caregiving. You can, in general, you can raise your hand if you have your camera on. Yeah. And if you're not, you probably will be one day, or maybe you have been. But I'm also in this awkward place of I'm a sandwich caregiver. So I caregive for my son, who has mental illness. And then I also caregive for my mom. And she's been in the hospital in Texas. And so, it's like this, I don't know if you can relate when things become sort of this teeter-totter and you're just trying to keep both ends from falling down and also keep your own things afloat. And I believe that it does take some measure of courage to be able to, do what you need to do and also selfishly provide for others. And one thing that we and I firmly believe in terms of caregiving, is the use of things that are preventative in nature. I don't want to wait until I'm burned out and then try to recover from it. I really want to do all of these things and these steps in preparation to prevent all of those things from happening. So preventative well-being is really at the heart of caregiving. It's the heart of being human. How can we begin to continuously take steps toward our future self, the future, the person that we're going to be later this evening, the person we are tomorrow, the person we are next year? Every decision and everything that we do is a vote, is a vote toward that kind of person and that identity. And so for me, courageous caregiving is exactly what that is all about. I'm actually going to share my screen. Let's see if I can pull this up and share well. Always a lot of clicks. And almost there. Perfect. Okay. And feel free. I know some of you who have your screens on, you can give me kind of a thumbs up if you can see my screen. Okay, good, perfect. So courageous caregiving is a powerful topic. And it really begins with the definition of caregiving. It's having that mental or moral strength to persevere, to withstand difficult things, challenges, even fear. The Oxford definition is strength in the face of pain or grief. Courage actually comes from the Latin origin of cor, which means heart. And I love this part of the definition. For me, it's telling the story of who you are with your entire heart, your whole heart. It's what I started talking about. It's this identifying yourself with doing things with a sense of heart, with a sense of courage. And to do that, it comes with vulnerability. And if you spend any time with me at all, if you're here last week or you go to any of my other talks, I really can't get through a talk without mentioning Brene Brown in some way. I have this secret desire to to imagine that she's like my best friend or something. I don't know if any of you have someone you truly admire, and that would be it. So her definition of vulnerability is uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure. So for me, courage is synonymous with the idea of being vulnerable. And it doesn't mean that it has to be something that's heroic. We can also have something that's called personal courage. So I'm going to ask you to write in the chat box, and I'll define personal courage a little bit more deeply. And it's being courageous in your own mind. So it really depends on like how you view the challenge that's in front of you, or the fears that you have, or the situation, how you perceive it. And then it's associated with a particular behavior that you perform. So in other words, like for some of us, getting up in the morning might actually take some courage. If you know you have a challenging day ahead, getting up, putting one foot in front of the other, and persevering through this challenging day is a form of personal courage. You might also have witnessed someone be incredibly vulnerable, whether that's sharing something from their heart or having the courage maybe not to be complicit in something. Just showing up oftentimes, again, takes personal courage. So I'm curious, you can either unmute or you can put something in the chat there. What is a snapshot of something that you've done recently that has exhibited this kind of personal courage, or maybe that you've witnessed? Yeah, someone wrote, doing it. I'm fatigued and only want to close my eyes. I can relate to that afternoon slump for sure. Having a difficult conversation with someone. Yeah, absolutely. That's a really, really big one. There's a talk that I'll be doing next week called Mindful Connection or Meaningful Connection, and having discerning boundaries with individuals. And it is not an easy thing to do. It definitely is something that takes practice and of course, courage. Yeah. Having patience. Oh my goodness. Well, I'm so glad that you wrote that, because for me, that's at the heart of what a mindfulness practice is. I don't know how many of you can identify, but I tend to be the personality type that's a pusher. So like, I'm going to push through. I'm going to be doing it 9 to 9 today. I can get it all done. I can cross it off my list. And I'm learning to work with more constraints and remove things from my list and try to only add the things that nourish me. And it's really hard, but pushers tend to lack patience. And that is often the case where my mindfulness comes into practice. Someone else wrote, my mother-in-law allowing herself to fall in love with a man who is dying. Wow. Mm-hmm. Initiating family meetings and encouraging communication. Yeah. And encouraging communication, but then there's also that fine balance of communication that is not violent, communication that is compassionate or empathetic, that has the ability to listen. I love there's a definition of listening. It's leaning in order to be changed by what we hear. And how many of us can actually, it's difficult, it's a practice, can really lean in with the willingness to be changed. That's powerful. Patience, communication. Woo! Okay, so I'm going to weave in some things about communication maybe in the next couple of weeks. It sounds to be like a hot topic. So definitely we'll keep that in mind. I'm going to move back to sharing my screen. So let's take a little meditation regarding courage. And so I'll encourage you, we're going to be doing these examples throughout our practice together in this hour. And one thing that I find really helpful is that, the computer is quite stimulating, and we're pretty busy on electronics most of our day. So if you have the opportunity to take the eyes slightly off the screen, you can either focus on something, either looking out the window or focusing on something that's beautiful. You can also take your eyes to a low gaze, in other words, kind of gazing downward, or you could close the eyes. And if you are able, and I do make some assumptions on accessibility, and I understand that we don't all have the same accessibility in our hands and our feet and our body. So keeping that in mind, you can have both feet on the ground if possible. Let your arms just drip or relax in your lap if that's accessible to you. And you don't need to, I think there's this perception that we need to kind of prop ourselves up to sit up straight. Really, one of the most tangible ways to be mindful in a posture is to make sure that we're able to breathe well, so that you're sitting in a way that you have access to your breath. And so however that feels for you, that is the type of posture I would encourage. So take a moment to notice your hands or your arms by your side. So the hands either connected to the lap or the arms sort of draped by your side. And allow yourself to feel the heaviness of that for a moment. And as you relax more and more, you might also feel the space between your ears and your shoulders grow just a little bit. You might also begin to notice that your head itself has a little bit more lightness in it. And you might even begin to feel the heaviness of your sits bones or how you're sitting on your seat. So you can feel the weight of that against gravity. And then take a moment to just connect to any sensation that you're feeling. So if you're feeling tension or tightness or fatigue, just notice that. Check in with it. Notice maybe where it shows up in your body. For me, sometimes fatigue shows up like a heavy weight across the front of my chest or a big, heavy blanket over my shoulders. Sometimes tension might show up as a knot in my stomach or a clenching of my hands or my jaw. So see if you notice that or notice where it's showing up for you and if you can do a little antidote to it, which might mean just separating the teeth, wiggling the hands, moving or shrugging the shoulders. So wherever that tension appears for you, would a small movement help alleviate that sensation, even for just a moment, so that you can see that it can shift or change. Even if it doesn't go away, it can be slightly altered. On your next exhale, see if you can recall a time in your life when you exemplified courage. And we just wrote some examples there in the chat box of courageous communication, showing up, just being present, when you exhibit patience. And then reflect for a moment on the why. Why were you courageous in that moment? What stands out for you on the why? Now take a moment to notice, when recalling of that time of being courageous, any sensations or emotions. So for me, I sort of feel a lifting in my chest when I think about a time that I was courageous. If I'm fatigued and I'm recognizing that there's even courage, personal courage in that, I might actually feel a little lift in energy. Or I might feel maybe a little sense of satisfaction for showing up when it's really hard. What emotion comes up for you? Maybe relief. For those of us that are dealing with courageous conversations. So connecting to that positive emotion for a few moments, take one hand and bring it towards your heart. Just this tender acknowledgement. You can almost imagine that, that maybe you reflect for a moment on someone who is very proud of you or has been proud of you in the past. They might have put their hand on your shoulder or given you a hug. And there's just this sense of tenderness that you're being seen, that someone has seen you, and that you also see that courage within yourself. You can release the hand and we'll take another breath together, breathing in slowly through the nose. and completing a breath all the way out. And you can add to the chat if you like what that felt like for you when you're ready to rejoin. This is really powerful. We talked in the very beginning about identifying with, that future self. So that thing we want to do, whether we want to be more healthy or whether we want to act more courageously or we want to be more patient. When we begin to realize that we actually can embody that characteristic in this moment, we are more likely to act in that way. So when we see ourselves as courageous, we're more likely to act courageously. Whew, this is a hard one. When we are courageous, that also means vulnerability is there. And with vulnerability, there may be, and I'm not a fan of this word, but this word kind of came out at me, mistakes. You could also think about maybe the term regret. I think sometimes there is some negative connotation around regret, but regret, and the studies back it up, the regret shows us actually what we value most. So if you think for a moment on something that gosh, I wish I had done this differently, or, oh, I regret not having done this, or, I think about all of the things that I regret, and it's typically not the things that I've done, but perhaps the things I didn't do. And what does that tell me about my values? So if I grew up with a real a mom who never met a stranger, and therefore there were a lot of embarrassing moments for me as a teenage girl of my mom constantly talking to anyone and everyone and finding out their life story. It is my mother's gift. And as she would do this, what I noticed about that gift is that no one left her presence without receiving some kind of compliment. Their eyes, the way that they moved about their life, something they had done, my mom would somehow tease it out, and they would walk away like feeling like $1,000,000. And when I think about regrets in my life, it's those moments or opportunities where I could have shared something with someone that I noticed about them. Maybe a small thing that they did, maybe a kindness, and I didn't say it. So maybe you're thinking of some other ways, and sometimes maybe sharing things with others is not your natural go-to. And I know that we are all more introverted or more extroverted, but having that courage to be able to notice can be incredibly powerful. We're going to take another Brene Brown. I didn't realize I had several in here, but here you go. It's your extra dose for today. There are too many people in the world today who decide to live in disappointment, is what that should say. To live disappointed rather than risk feeling disappointment. So I actually have Brené's book right here. And if you haven't read, and I'm sure Jessica's probably gotten this one in the library, Atlas of the Heart by Brené Brown. Sorry, Jessica, if you don't, you guys better get it because it's so good. I'm going to read it from the book. There are too many people in the world today who decide to live disappointed rather than risk feeling disappointment. And so that really in and of itself is what courage is about. We're going to take another example here. So if you have 2 pieces of paper, can be even just a Post-it note, something like that, that you've got to the side. And if you want to pull that out for a moment, if not, you can always listen to the recording later as well and do this exercise again. So I'll have you take a moment to write about a recent either mistake, and again, not my favorite word, but mistake or regret. So you can just jot that down. So if there was something that comes to mind that was a recent, maybe situation, could have handled it a little differently. Maybe it's something that you regret. Just take a moment to jot that down. And then now take a moment to jot down how that made you feel. Maybe when that mistake happened, you were disappointed in yourself, or maybe there was sadness or even anger or confusion. And as you can probably guess, this assignment is going to ask you to crumple that up. So you can take another moment here to write that regret. And you're going to crumple that regret up. And mainly that crumpling action is representation of that feeling you had with it, that feeling. You'll take your next piece of paper and you'll take a moment to just notice a few ways that that regret or that mistake helped you grow or changed you in some way. One that I'm thinking of, the way that it helped me grow was to learn to pause more. I don't need to respond, react, jump on it, jump in. I can wait. I can wait. Oftentimes not wanting to make a mistake or not wanting to act on something is motivated by a fear of failure. And if you are identifying as a caregiver, I know that oftentimes it's not by choice. Many of us never anticipated being in this kind of situation, having to have various responsibilities that were not in our life plan. And no one tells you that you're going to have all these other things that are going to invade or come into these life plans. So how do we remove the idea that things just need to be just so, when instead they can just be okay? So let's take another breath together. So you can kind of put that aside and save a little bit more of that exercise if that was meaningful to you for later. So the first thing I'll ask is, if you have access to your hands, you can just simply bring them toward the top of your head. And you'll just place one hand on one side and the other hand on the other side. Just hold for a moment. Just acknowledging sort of that thinking mind, the busyness. All of the thoughts. So just focus on the feeling of the hands against the head. Notice what that feeling is like. And then you'll gently move the hands just right around the ears, resembling listening, hearing, that leaning in to be changed by what we hear. And then you'll just gently either bring your hand toward the lips, or you can bring them just toward the throat. Just acknowledging speech, words, communication. And lowering the hands toward the lap, just acknowledging a sense of honoring to your thoughts, to what you listen to, and to what you say. Let's just take a long exhale here and follow your exhale all the way to the end without forcing, and then let the inhale be a gentle lift from the exhale. Follow the exhale all the way out as if it were just a waterfall. And imagine when the waterfall pools at the bottom, there's this gentle pause. And then let it cascade back into an inhale. One more time as you exhale, just follow it to your completion. And see if you can feel a pause. And when you're ready, you can bring your eyes back to the screen. So seeing ourselves as courageous, we're likely to act courageously, comfortable making mistakes, being vulnerable. And courage, right? It takes perseverance. So I'm a big fan of, there is a neuroscientist, his name is Judson Brewer, and he has an incredible book he's written about anxiety, but he talks a lot about these habit loops and how to create those positive habit loops. And so when we think about creating a change, whatever it is that we're wanting to change, so maybe you might reflect on something. So maybe your lack of patience, maybe maybe it's not speaking courageously. Maybe it's kind of getting the courage to have that conversation with a loved one. So imagine that scenario where you're confronted with, we'll take impatience, for example, where you want to react and you're just missing the patience. It's that moment, right? We have the thought of, I can't believe this is happening again. And then you want to say something or respond in some way. It's that moment right there where the habit needs to shift. It's the moment where we speak or do or perform something. So generally, because it's not the thought is normal. The thought is anger. The thought is, we're impatient. The sensations that happen in our body are also normal. They're physiological. We're triggered by something and maybe our ears turn red or our heart begins to pound or whatever the response. So the thoughts are okay and the sensations are okay. What happens is in the space between. So that's where the habit loop can change. Whatever our action is, whatever the words are, even if it could also be that we don't say it aloud and it's a negative thought loop, right? It's an internal conversation. The thought is not wrong, but ruminating on the thought and keep going on the thought, hammering the thought, right? So that's our action. So that's the moment where we can create a powerful change. And so whatever it is that we do instead needs to have a deeper neural groove than our go-to, right? So if my impatience with my 16-year-old who forgot to bring in the trash cans again, and I really want to say something that might not be the most encouraging thing, that's the moment for me. I might notice the thought, the anger, I might notice get myself worked up, but then how do I express it? Can I take that moment to physiologically shift? So how do you do that? How do you create the shift? It's only by practice. So one of the easiest ways to do it is to pick something that's very simple. So, or something that comes up for you a lot. If there's a certain something that's constantly triggering, is there a different pattern that you can create instead? So instead of seeing my son right away, I might go outside and take a deep breath. And then I'm going to speak to my son in a little more calm manner. You might think of another scenario, but how do you create that pause? What can you do? And then Deb mentioned she took the Take 5 a lot since last week, which is really helpful for her. And I'm really happy to hear that was helpful. But there's something that you can do that you can begin to practice where that neural groove becomes deeper than the negative go-to that you typically do. Whew. All right. So here we go. Oh, I'm awfully repetitive, aren't I? Number 4 qualities of courage or heart. And this is really one of my favorites. How do we help our hearts grow and change? And some of that is compassion and tenderness. I love this saying, it is in your self-interest to find a way to be very tender. And we often think that our response is for the other person, but in actuality, it's for us, right? Because they can sense our demeanor. They can sense our shift in energetic experience or quality. And what if that was tenderness? So we're gonna fold into a loving kindness meditation. I'm just gonna take a quick look at the chat. Oh, I love it. Jessica put in, I'm assuming that was Atlas for the Heart. Yeah, you can click on that if for those of you that are interested in checking that book out. I can't tell you how much I reference it. That's Brene Brown's book. So we'll just gently move in toward a loving kindness meditation. And again, I'll ask that you can take your eyes just slightly off the screen, or you can close them if that feels comfortable for you. And this particular meditation comes from Thich Nhat Hanh's practice. So as your eyes are closed, you're just checking in with your body for a moment. Noticing if there's anything different or changed, or if it feels the same. Let your jaw relax. Let your shoulders soften a little bit. Release any gripping in the hands and the feet. So this particular meditation will be on yourself. And as I just mentioned about tenderness, we really aren't much use to others until we take good care of ourselves. So you can silently repeat it after me. May I be peaceful, happy, and light in body and spirit. May I be safe and free from injury. May I be free from anger, afflictions, fear, and anxiety. May I learn to look at myself with the eyes of understanding and love. And may I be able to recognize and touch the seeds of joy and happiness in myself. May I learn to identify and see the sources of anger, craving, and delusion in myself. And may I know how to nourish the seeds of joy in myself every day. May I be able to live fresh, solid, and free. And may I be free from attachment and aversion, but not be indifferent. Let's just take a few breaths here. If that putting that hand on the heart was comforting to you earlier, just that sense of tenderness, you could even just place the hands together and just rub the hands together, holding your hands. When you're ready, you can open your eyes. Take a moment to notice how you feel. Loving kindness is one of the first qualities, and compassion is the capacity to understand suffering in yourself and in the other person. And when we seek to understand, that's when compassion unfolds and a sense of relief. The way to develop compassion in ourselves is to learn to recognize our own emotions, not stuff them down, not go around them, but to be able to be with and invite. Statistically, emotions actually last only a few seconds, if you can believe that or not. If they linger beyond that, it's actually called rumination. But that experience of just elation or deep sadness, those emotions continuously shift and change, and they physiologically change within us. That's why we feel different after we've had a good cry, right? Or it's why we feel different when we hug someone. Those serotonin hormones are released. And then a few moments later, they are gone. So we'll unfold into our next meditation. And this one is one of my favorites. This is a rain meditation. And it's been made famous or well known by Tara Brach, but it actually came from another meditation teacher, and it's really incredibly powerful. And I'll share the acronym with you in just a few moments. Yeah. Thank you. Stephanie put in the flyer for the Caregiver Day, so I appreciate you adding that, Stephanie. So a compassion meditation using an acronym called RAIN. And so you can this time, if you need to kind of stand up and move around, you can actually stand. If you're comfortable as you are seated, you can stay seated. If you have access to be a little more inclined on a couch, you can do that as well. However, it feels right for you. I know this is a long time to be in one place, so take a moment to tap in again to what's happening on the inside. So we're recognizing it's the R in RAIN. Be certainly listening to my voice. I certainly don't take offense to that. But just notice, tap in, what is happening? Notice if there's anything new that has arrived, a new softness or a new awareness. And the A is allow. So can I be with what has arrived? Maybe reflecting on that regret, maybe their emotion is kind of coming or you're carrying with you. Can you allow, can you be with it just as it is in this moment? And then get really curious about it. So the I is investigate. And the N in rain is nurture. Can I be with this experience with
I hope you guys can hold that meditation while we wait for Melissa to get back with us. We seem to have lost her connection. One moment.
All right, I lost Wi-Fi connection there. So I don't know if everyone was lost to that or just me.
We did notice you left us, but I think
Okay.
we're holding the meditation. So if you want to continue.
Perfect. That's perfect. I tell you what, I'll record just similarly to what I did last week. Oh, you all are frozen, so I'm not sure if you can see me.
I can still see you.
Okay.
You hear?
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that might be an appropriate closure since I am having Wi-Fi difficulty. And you all are freezing on me. Yeah.
We still see and hear you though.
Oh, you do? Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So it's only on my end that you're all frozen. So I will send you all an extra bonus recording of a rain meditation so that you can kind of experience that in full. Although I'm sure the silence was probably nice after hearing my voice for an hour. So so there are two other components as we close together of the qualities, the four qualities of the heart. So it's loving kindness, compassion, and it is the sense of mudita, or it's almost like a type of not a jealous love, but it's like, I am so joyful and happy for you. So if you think of someone maybe who's been on a recent vacation, and instead of feeling those pangs of jealousy, you're so happy that that person was able to go and rest and enjoy themselves. And you just feel this vicarious happiness for them. And so that is the third quality, which I really, it's one of my favorite words. And the last one is a sense of equanimity. And my favorite definition of equanimity is just being okay with what is. And if that isn't the definition of courageous caregiving also, I don't know what is. Is it is your situation. So whatever is happening in your life, whether my Wi-Fi is going down or last week having odd things happen on Zoom, right? It's just being okay with things as it is, not forcing our own, right, determined agenda. It's this ability to do what we need to do and then stepping back and saying, okay, what can happen with that seed I just planted? What can happen with that activity that I just did? And being all right with the results as they are. So I'll leave you today with this thought. I was just reading this from, it's an author I mentioned last week, James Clear. You cannot remove the struggle from life, but you can improve your ability to handle the challenge. And so that is my hope as we walk together. We have 2 more sessions coming up next week and the week after. And I love these sessions. It just reinforces my sense of connection and to be able to offer these things for you all. I feel really lucky that we have the Santa Fe Library sponsoring them. And I would love to hear from you all the things that you learn. So when you join next week, let me know what you've been able to apply. And I'm going to put in the chat box here, caregiverwellnessretreat.com. Everything that we offer and that we have on our website is free. So we have a lot of programs and online retreats where you can just watch the recordings from prior things that I've done or hosted, and those are at no cost to you. So, and I'll, with this last minute that we have, if anyone wants to share, or if you have any questions regarding either our topic today or mindfulness, I'm happy to answer those. You can also put it in the chat if you like.
Melissa, can you say again the acronym RAIN and what the letters stand for again? I think I missed 1 or 2 of them.
So the R is recognize. So we recognize what's happening, and it could be an emotion, it could be something in our body. The A is allow. So it's that sense of equanimity. It's like being with what is. The I is getting curious, investigating. So I always think about it as kind of, if you've ever thought about moving out, having a balcony view of a situation, like, oh, that's really interesting, that's happening. I'm really curious about that. Or I often think about it as sitting and having tea with this emotion, realizing that it's not myself, that I'm just going to ask it some questions. And it helps me remove myself from identifying with it. Like, I am not anger, but anger is happening right now. Or I'm not like this really sad person, but sadness is here, and I'm just going to visit with it for a little bit. And the N is nurture. So it's, can I have kindness toward that experience? So can I have a sense of compassion? Thank you, Jessica, for putting it in the chat for me. So recognize, allow, investigate, and nurture. And I'll do a little recorded one for you if Jessica doesn't mind sending it out to everyone. Okay, awesome. I know we're right at time. I'll take 1 more minute. If Jessica, you're welcome to close the recording if you want. But
sure, I'll close the recording, but feel free to go as long as you all need.